everyone. Good morning, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. My name's Michael Barth, and this is Owner Stories Day. Owner Stories number 69 today. Very, very shortly, I will be joined by Matt. Those of you who have been here before know that all of these owner stories are done through Zoom. They're done through Zoom, and that's just the way I can get to speak to all the Porsche owners around the world. Like I said, we're up to number 69. We've had a lot of great stories on the Owner Story series. If you haven't listened to all of them, I suggest you start at number 1 and make your way through. There's some really cool stories in there and some really cool Porsches that people own and have owned. Anyway, if you want to be on the Owner Story series, the best way to do that is to go over to PorscheCooled on Instagram. That's just PorscheCooled, one word, on Instagram. Give us a follow, and you can send me a DM from there, and then I will eventually get back to you, and we'll schedule a time for our chat, for our Porsche chat. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Let me get Matt through Zoom, and let's start talking about his PorscheCooled owner story. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. Welcome back to Owner Stories number 69. I don't think I mentioned it in the beginning, but I'm going to be joined with Matt. Matt's here at the moment, and Matt's coming in from the US. He's coming in from New York. I was just asking him actually how he's going with the snow and getting his 911 out in the snow. Good evening, Matt. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and thanks for coming on Owner Stories.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm glad you're here. I mean, I've always liked to have fellow 997 owners on the show. Being a 997 fan myself, as you know, I have a 997.1. I think the same year as yours. Yours is a 06, you said, yeah?
Correct, yes.
Fantastic.
It's been great. It's been so much fun having it. I'm really, really excited, and it's just been a really great experience so far.
Yeah, it really is a great community, isn't it? It's not until you own a 911, and we'll get into that. It's not until you actually own a 911 until you actually realize how great it is and how supportive, I guess, and passionate the community is, more so than other marques, I think, more so than other car brands. But let's start. Listeners always like us to start at the beginning, and we always like to start where it all started. And a lot of people with Porsche, a lot of people get into it later in life for obvious reasons, priorities and money and all those sort of things. But we always have some memories of cars along the way when we're a kid. What are your first sort of memories of noticing Porsche? Was it something that just happened later in life, or do you remember it as a kid or growing up?
No, absolutely. Just kind of throughout my whole life, I've always been really into cars growing up, even as a young kid. And especially Porsche, Ferrari, Lamborghini. My first really recollection was my dentist in my town had a Porsche 911. It was a 964. And I just remember whenever he would leave it outside, I would just sit there and just in awe and just like totally just go crazy every time he had it out. It was a black with the whale tail too. So loved it so much.
Yeah, the whale tail is always that thing we remember, isn't it? That's the iconic, yes. That iconic whale tail. We might not know what it's called, but we always remember the tail, that's for sure. I always remember seeing I think the first one I saw was like an oak green. I saw an oak green one in Sydney when I first moved to Sydney a long time ago. And I remember this oak green with tan interior with the whale tail. It was a fantastic looking car.
Yeah, absolutely. It never leaves your mind.
Yeah. So what about the car journey though? Because you live in New York now. Have you
Yes.
I'm guessing have you always lived in New York?
No, I grew up in New Jersey. So I grew up right outside of New York, about 45 minutes away. So growing up, no, I never had a sports car or anything. Not until later in life was I able to afford one for one, but I feel like it was really kind of the right time to get one.
So living in New Jersey, did you find the need to have a car? I mean, it's close to New York. There's more space in New Jersey. I've been through New Jersey.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of it, but I've been through it.
Yeah, so New Jersey totally needed a car, absolutely.
So what sort of cars did you own when you were growing up? Was there something memorable that you remember today, or something that you got rid of that you wish you would have kept? Is there a car there that sticks in your mind?
Unfortunately, nothing too crazy. So I grew up, first car, I'd always get hand-me-down cars from my parents. So my dad gave me his 88 Corolla, which he bought brand new. By the time I got it, it had 250,000 miles on it. And essentially, it was just like, I just wanted to destroy the car because I hated it. I didn't want it, but unfortunately, I didn't have any money when you're 17 years old. So you put up with it, you deal with it. So I had that car until eventually it broke down with like 300,000 miles on it. But the thing was just rock solid. The first memorable car I had was a Nissan Maxima. And that was just the first car I ever had that had some speed to it. So it gave me that little taste that I was looking for.
A Nissan Maxima, it's like almost like a Nissan limousine, isn't it? Isn't it like it's a larger car, right? It was quite upmarket, wasn't it, the Maxima?
Exactly, it was a sedan. So it was a bigger car, but it had like 205 horsepower, and this was like 1997 I had it. So at that point, it felt fast. So it was like the first car I really had that had some speed.
Right. So you're in New Jersey. So then you moved to New York. You're living in New York. Do you own any new cars? Do you own any cars while you're living in New York before the Porsche came along?
No. So in my process right before I moved to New York, I had a Honda Accord, and the only fun thing about that car was that it was a stick shift. But so I had that, and then right when I moved into New York, I just never drove the car anymore. So I actually didn't have a car for about 5 years.
Yeah, and like in Sydney here, I live. Our place in Sydney is in the inner city, and it's like it's not as busy as New York. It's not as crazy as New York with traffic and roads and whatever. And it's it's easy to own a car in a city if you have the right place to park, if you have the space, if you feel comfortable with your car. So I want to go back to that decision that you made. Let's get into the Porsche story, but the decision you made that a year ago or a year or so ago. You decided that, okay, I want to get a sports car. I deserve a sports car. I want to get a sports car. We all have our reasons. What was the reason what was the reason that you justified to yourself that you wanted a 911? And then, how did you go about finding it? And was the 997 what you were looking for, or was it something else?
So the biggest reason is during COVID hit, we were still in the city and it just got so crazy here. We just kind of needed to get out. My wife is from California, so we actually ended up going to California and staying with her mom for almost 4 months. So during that time, my wife had her car from when she was a kid, which is an older BMW. Essentially, it just wasn't running well. So It kind of broke down, and we didn't have a car at the time. So we started using Turo, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with.
Yes.
So we started using that to rent cars, essentially. So during the process, I saw this beautiful 991 in bright yellow, and I was like, oh, let's check it out. So I rented it. Next thing I know, I have it for 2 weeks and I can't get rid of this car. I'm just like in love with this car.
Yeah.
So we have it for there, and then we end up going back to New York. So now we're back in New York. We're still stuck in the apartment. I'm like, oh, this is so boring. We need to do something. So I'm still just like fiending over the last car we had. I'm like, listen, we need to go find a car. So that's where the search began. So that's what made me start looking for cars. So originally I was looking for a 991 actually.
Okay. So you start looking. You've had the 991 through Turo. 991's a little bit newer. Great color in the yellow. Great color.
Yeah.
So you start looking for 991s, Matt? Is that what you start looking for? Is the price a barrier there, or is there just not that many available?
The price was like, I didn't want to go too crazy, but I didn't want to go brand new because I'm in the city, and I knew the car was just going to get beat up being here. So I wanted something that I could drive and enjoy and not worry about too much. So first looking at 991s, and then it started looking at 997s as well. And then I test drove the 997 first, and it was a much more raw experience and a much more kind of exhilarating experience than the 991 was. So that's what kind of started directing me more towards the 997.
I guess that's good then that you had the car from Turo, you had the 991, because you had something to base it on, didn't you? So you're not going in blind, your first 911. So you know what the 991 feels like. And a lot of people prefer the 997 over the 991. We've heard that before. Nothing bad against people that own 991s. But
that's a beautiful car.
It's a different car, right? It's a different generation, and quite a big difference in the generation from a 997 to a 991, actually. So you start looking. Are there many cars for sale in New York, or do you have to look further afield?
Same thing. There's in the city, it's just kind of like sporadic. You'll see certain people, like I saw one in Brooklyn, but then it was mostly more like northern New York, and then mostly in Jersey as well. So it was kind of like, I was trying to keep it more in like the tri-state area because I didn't want to go too far because I don't have a car. So it was kind of me taking trains and buses to get to these like test drives.
Okay. So what are your search criteria then? Are you searching for a Carrera? Are you searching for an S? Are you searching for a GTS? Is there a certain criteria that you put in when you start searching for these cars?
I knew I wanted the S because I want the power. So I wanted a little bump in power. So I was at least looking for an S. So that was pretty much my bottom line criteria. Okay. A GTS would have been great too, but they're just so hard to find.
Yeah. So
and then, sorry, go ahead.
And what about the transmission? Are you looking for manual? Looking for PDK? What's the criteria there?
So I always wanted a manual. The one I had in California was actually a PDK, and it was awesome. It was really fun. But I really liked the experience of a manual.
Okay, so How long does it take you? This is the start of COVID. This is the start of 2020. How long does it take you to find the right car?
About 4 weeks.
4 weeks. And so where did you find the car? Tell the listeners how you found the car and where it was located.
So the first one I test drove was in Brooklyn, and that was an owner's car. So that was a private owner. It was a great car. It was a point 2 actually. But it was kind of a bare bones car. It didn't really have anything that I was looking for in terms of like comforts. Like I really wanted the sports seats. I wanted the sport chrono. That was pretty much my 2 biggest things that I really wanted. And this had neither one. So that was like, okay, it was a good starter car to check out. And then same day, I was looking online and I'm saying I found this car and it was at a dealership in Brooklyn. And I was kind of skeptical because it was at like a Mitsubishi dealership in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And I'm like, this is already a bad start.
Yeah.
But I'm like, all right, let me go check out the car because it's an easy train ride to get to. Because that was like the biggest thing. It was like easy to get to.
Yeah.
So I go check it out and it's my current car and it was beautiful. It's fully optioned out. It has everything you could want in it. Sports seats, sport chrono. It had the sport exhaust on it. Extended leather. So everything was really just perfect and top notch on it. The car was completely clean, 2-owner car. It had full service history. So I was like, all right, this is really good. Test drove it. Test drive went great. The only issue was the test drive, like I'm driving around Brooklyn. So I'm like, is there anywhere I could go and open up the car? They're like, no, you could just drive down this avenue and like give it gas. I'm like, yeah, it's like,
so they won't let you go further out. Where could you have tested it though? Outside of Brooklyn?
Not really anywhere. The only place I could have gone is like the BQE or just like Cross Bronx Expressway or something like that.
Right,
and like, even there, you can't really open up because it's usually a very high traffic area.
That makes it difficult, doesn't it? So you don't really know until you actually buy the car and you go on a long drive what it's really like. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that story as well. So sometimes, though, I think I've spoken about it on the podcast and with other owners. Sometimes when you find a Porsche in a Mitsubishi dealer or even a Mercedes-Benz dealer or something like that, sometimes it's a better car. Like it's a car in that the dealer wants to get rid of. You know what I mean? Especially if it's a Porsche in a Merc dealer. They want to get rid of it. And, you know, sometimes the price is better and sometimes, you know, that you can make a better deal. Were you able to do a better deal because it was at this Mitsubishi dealer or were they still pretty firm on the price and everything like that?
Kind of exactly like you're saying. They just want to get rid of the car because they're just like, this car doesn't kind of fit into what we're trying to sell. So they kind of just want to get rid of it. The only issue was they already had like 2 people. The car, I think it was there for like 3 days. And in 3 days, there were 2 people ready to kind of jump at it. So I didn't really get that much of a discount on it, but I still already got a really good deal considering that it was COVID time and not too many people were really buying cars at the time.
Yeah. And I guess that's the good side of it, isn't it? Is that during 2020, beginning of 2020, especially, people were selling cars. People didn't really start going crazy on all these auction sites and buying classic cars, and the Porsche value of 997s, 996s didn't really, well, to my knowledge, it didn't really move up, Matt, until probably, you know, the latter half of the year, the latter half of 2020. So actually, at the beginning of 2020, and I've had a few people on Honest Stories recently, actually, who have actually bought Porsches at that time. And they've actually gained from it. They've actually gained not just from owning the car and enjoying the car, they've gained in value ways because the value has actually increased significantly since 2020. So that's a good side of it as well, that you've been enjoying the car, but you've also got that value, that peace of mind that your money's still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just go back to that. Let's just tell the listeners exactly what you bought, because you kind of went through the options then. But you bought just tell them exactly what it was. It was a 06, right?
Correct. 06 997.1 Carrera S.
And what wheels does it have on it? Your wheels, are they the Carrera Classic wheels? Is that what they're called?
Yeah, so it's like the 5-star big ones.
Yeah, they're a nice wheel though. They're a good wheel on the 997. I'm just going to let everyone know while we're talking so they can have a look at your car, because you got some great images on your Instagram, and you can see. I can see that you take a lot of pictures of your car, and you'll take a lot of pictures of your wife and your dog. There's not many pictures of you. Not many pictures of you with your car there, Matt. I've noticed that. That's a trend. I think that's a trend on your Instagram. So Matt's Instagram is Anomaly Matt, Anomoly Matt, Matt, and that's on Instagram. So go over there, give Matt a follow, and tell him you heard his story on Owner Stories. And you'll see where he drives his car, and you'll see all the great images that he has there too. So you're at the Mitsubishi dealer. You do the deal. You make a quick decision. You talk to your wife about it. You make the decision pretty quickly.
Yeah, she was right with us. So yeah, she came for the test drive. But the other good thing is that we knew the dog could fit back in the car. So that was the other big criteria of us getting this car, is making sure he could fit in. But yeah, right then and there, I knew the car was well. I just had to get the PPI on it, and then I was pretty much set to go at that point.
So when you got the PPI, I'm glad to hear you got a PPI. I'm a big fan of the PPIs, as you know. Mm-hmm. So when you got the PPI, what showed up that concerned you? I mean, we know the list of PPI, the list on a PPI is always a little bit longer than we're sort of, it kind of does surprise us at first. A lot of things aren't that important to get fixed straight away. Was there anything on there that you thought, oh, that's a flag, I better get that fixed straight away, or can I do a better deal? What came up?
The only biggest thing was the water pump. So I had to change out the water pump just because it was kind of past due on its service.
Right.
So I did that right away. That was the biggest thing I did. And the other thing, that was pretty much it. The other thing was just kind of cosmetic stuff. It had a couple scratches on it. And otherwise, it was a really clean car.
Is the water pump an expensive fix for a 997? I don't think I've had that done on mine. I think mine's been okay from memory.
I did the water pump. I did the thermostat. So I think all in it ended up being around like $2,300 or $2,400.
Okay, so a reasonable cost. I think the water pump is a common maintenance failure thing on the 997 and 996, isn't it? I think I've seen that come up.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I heard as well.
All right, so you buy this car, you pick it up. How was the feeling? How was that feeling when you're in your first Porsche and you're driving it back to Manhattan?
It was very surreal. It took a while to like really think, this is my car now. Like we actually did this. This is our car. It was so sporadic. Like we just went there, we bought it. Half the reason too is like, all right, now we don't have to take a train back home. This is awesome. Now we can drive back home. This is great. So we're driving back home. Like I said, we're driving over the bridge. We're driving into Manhattan. It's just like, this is an unreal experience. And then the first night we got it, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to street park it. It won't be a big deal. And that was just a complete nightmare. The whole night I was just sit there, just like stressing out about the car. So that lasted one night.
Really? Yeah, I think I saw that image on your Instagram, actually, in front of that older type building near the bridge there, right? There's a picture of your car. Yeah, I saw that picture just before we came on. And I was going to ask you that because I could not, I mean, having been to New York quite a few times, and my wife's sister lives in New York, and I could not park my car on the street in New York. I think I'd have to sit there with it, Matt. I'd have to sit outside and watch it. You know what I mean? Or I'd be going and checking on it every hour or so.
Oh, it's a nightmare. We walk by, so I walk the dog all the time, and just the stuff you'll see. We saw a Cayenne that someone must have threw something out of their window. So there's just this metal, like, it looked like a TV stand just on top of their car.
What?
And I'm like, thank God I don't street park. Like, I just don't want to deal with this stuff ever.
So how did you do that then? So you park it the first night you get the car, you pick it up. It's your brand new car. It's in great condition. You park it on the street. So then you go about finding the right garage to park it in. Is there a good and bad garages in New York? How do you go about finding the right place to keep your new 911?
So this is how you find out. It's just trial and error. So yeah, the first night I was too stressed out, and I was like, I can't live like this. So we go look for parking garages. So luckily there's apps that you can download that kind of tell you the prices of every garage in your area.
Okay.
So first thing I did, I tried to find a moderately, priced garage, because some of the prices, it's like $1,200 a month for a parking garage, and you're just like, it's insane.
Yeah.
So I tried to find one kind of on the cheaper end. So the first one was kind of more on the cheaper end of the garages. They did a terrible job. They just didn't care. They scratched up my car all the time. They would literally park it on top of the car behind me. So the bumper was touching my bumper. So it was just unacceptable for the price that I was paying for it. So I went to another garage, same issue. Then I just kept paying more and more, which is ridiculous. And now I'm at a garage where they actually take care of my car.
These are undercover garages, right? They're not like stacker type garages where they're outside. They're actually undercover. Yeah,
correct. And they're all valet. So you don't park the car yourself. You give it to the attendant parks your car. So generally these guys, unfortunately, don't really care that much. So they don't really treat your car with much care.
So do you get to see where your car's parked though? Or they go and get your car and they bring it out to you and you don't even know where it's been parked and you just see the new scratches on the side or on the bumpers or whatever?
So this is the other racket they do. So you pay for just like you said, they'll just move your car in and out, or you could pay a more expensive fee and they'll keep your car in a single spot that they don't move. So that's what I do now. I pay for having my car in a certain spot that they never move it.
Oh, okay. That's good. But that's obviously a lot more expensive, right? So you have to add that to the cost of ownership.
Correct.
So you've had the car 1 year almost. How is getting onto a year? So how's the reliability been on the 997? Because a lot of listeners who listen to the podcast, they're looking, there's a lot of people who own Porsches already, but there's a lot of people who are looking for 997s, 996s. How have you found the first year of ownership and the upkeep and the maintenance side of it? Has anything come up in the car that you've sort of been a little bit concerned about?
No, luckily, besides the changing the water pump, I just, I changed the oil. I changed the tires after having it for 6 months just because they said that the back ends were getting worn out. So I just changed all four. Then I got winter tires for it. And besides that, the maintenance has been relatively low. I bring it in to get serviced about every 3 months just to make sure everything's looking good. Otherwise, it's been bulletproof for me. I drive it 2-3 times a week. I put 20,000 miles on it in a year. So we drive it all the time, and it's really been great for us.
So let's talk about that, how you use your car. You bought the car because of COVID. You bought the car because you wanted to get out of the city. I mean, a lot of people during COVID, when I was in London not long ago, people were buying houses in the country, to get out of central London. A lot of people don't have balconies. They don't have any back gardens or yards or land to sort of enjoy it. So you get the car. The car is the means to get away from the city. So what do you add to the car to make those journeys more easier for you? I noticed, did you have a roof box as well, or you don't have a roof box?
No, I do not. That's one thing my wife actually wants to get. She thinks it looks cool. She loves Lorenzo's. So she's like, oh, Lorenzo's looks really cool. We should think about getting one. So that might be in the future, but I'm not sure yet. So the listeners know Matt's a friend of Lorenzo.
Lorenzo was on Owner Stories. I can't remember the number, actually. Sorry, Lorenzo. Lorenzo is at Porsche Life _New York City, and Lorenzo has the roof box, the Yakima, I think from memory, Yakima roof box.
I believe so.
Yeah. So that's something I'm always looking at as well. Someone said to me the other day, though, they said, "Why do you need the roof box for?" And I said, "I don't know." I mean, I have to do longer journeys. You know what I mean? Like a guy another owner that I talked to in Sydney who's got a 997, he just got the racks and he's looking for a box as well. So I think you start with the Porsche roof racks, and then you go from there, and then you get inspired, I think. But for you, I think it actually works really well, because I'm looking at your Instagram. These drives that you go on, you drive your car a lot. You said to me you drove your car just on Sunday, right?
Yeah, we took it out in the snow and just kind of see how it held up with the winter tires on.
So what sort of tires do you put on the car then, for other listeners? What sort of winter tires? What are the ones that you would suggest that have worked well on the 997?
So the only ones I've used so far, I got the Pirelli Scoto Zeros, and they've been awesome so far. It makes a really big difference, even without the snow, because even with my summer tires last year driving in the winter, just even when it got cold out, you could just feel that they just were really hard, really rock solid, and just wouldn't really get that warm.
Right. But do you have a second set of wheels, or you just put them on your Carrera rims?
No, as of now, I'm switching out. I'm saving up. I want to get the BBSs right now, so I'm in the process of kind of figuring out which ones I want to get.
Okay, the very expensive BBSs.
It's hard not to love them.
They're a very cool wheel. They're very cool wheel, but they really are expensive for what.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So what else have you added to the car then? Have you added any other mods to the car? Is the exhaust? We always like talking about the sound of the 997. Does it have the sports exhaust?
So I had the original sport exhaust. I got rid of it and I got the Soul Performance exhaust.
Okay, so tell me about the Soul Performance exhaust, because I'm not a huge fan of Soul Performance. I think the sound is not Porsche enough. And if you had the PSE on it originally and you changed to Soul, how would you say the sound is compared to the original?
I think it feels a little bit more raw. Like, not that the original one wasn't bad by any means. This one, I like it that it's valved, so I could keep it a little bit more quiet. It still has like that nice raw sound, and then otherwise I can make it really loud, and then it gives me just that little bit more kind of hard feeling when I'm driving the car.
So how does it sound compared to the PSE though? Is it deeper? Is it higher? Is it racier? How does the sound differ?
I'd say deeper and more racier. It's just kind of like more of like a grunty sound.
Right, and in that they connect that up to so you had the switchable exhaust in your 911 before, so they just connected up to the same switch?
So it's actually, you have this little almost like remote control that you could switch the valve on and off.
Oh, right, so it's got the valve. Mm-hmm. But you have the sports exhaust button on your console?
Correct, but I don't have the sport exhaust. I just have the PCM or PSM.
Oh, okay. So you got the Soul Performance. What else? Have you added anything else? So you're going to get a second set of wheels.
Yeah, when I get the wheels, I've I did a short shifter. I changed up the DRLs. I kind of put the LED DRLs on there. I put LED taillights on it. So I just kind of...
Sorry, Matt, how do they work? Did you have any errors with those, with the changing it over to LEDs?
I did actually. So yeah, I didn't originally, and then for some reason, eventually I just got the error. So when I brought it into my shop, they kind of fixed the error for me, and it was actually what it was just a loose wire connection.
Right. Is there a particular brand of LEDs that is better for the 997? How did you research that? Did you go onto Renlist, or did you just go to your shop and ask them? How did you find the right? Because I know this is really quite a tricky one for people. Exhaust, working out the exhaust, you've got the soul performance. And also working out changing over to LED lights. Now, with my 997, I changed the rear. I changed some bulbs out to LEDs, and then I got errors, and then my brake lights weren't working. So I had errors with that because it's something to do with the power or whatever of the globe. So I just removed them. So how do you find out what is the best LED to switch it out if you want to upgrade the look of your 997?
So see, like I said, I went on Renlist. I also just looked on like tons of YouTube videos of just people who were installing them and just see which kind of looked the best and who didn't have errors or who didn't have issues with them kind of a long period of time.
Is there a particular brand then? What is the brand?
I forget the front DRLs. I can't even remember. And then the back ones were Depot, like DEPO.
Okay. And you like the look of them better than the stock?
I always love the stock look too. I just like how these ones kind of modernize it a little bit. At nighttime, I think it's like a huge difference with the back LED lights. I think it looks really cool at night. During the day, I think I like them kind of similar in terms of the older and the newer ones.
Yeah, I always find the main issue with my 997 is the front headlights are just not bright enough, because I've got the standard lights and they're just way not bright enough. I have got a couple of globes that I purchased, brighter, newer globes, which I'll switch out. But I know with the rear lights, with the rear LEDs, I know Steve had them on his GT3. He changed them onto his 997 GT3. And I think he had an issue with them as well. There was some kind of error with them as well, and he switched back to the originals. I do like the look of the originals, I have to say. I do like the look of the I'm on this bit of an original kick at the moment with the 997, but I do like the original rear lights. That's for sure.
Anyway, I go back and forth.
Yeah, I know, it's hard, isn't it? It's hard. I was only talking to Steve the other day, the podcast that's coming up on Friday this week, that every time I add something to my 911, like even the shift knob, I always think, am I ruining it? Am I destroying the originality? Am I, changing it too much? And it's such a simple thing, and it's so reversible. It's a crazy way to think, but it's always in your mind that, you're doing too much. You know what I mean?
But then it's at the same time, it's fun. You're making it kind of your own. Because I'm the same way. I have a carbon shift knob that came with it, but it's kind of flimsy, and I'm always thinking about changing it out for like that heavy aluminum one, or they even have like a heavier carbon one. So same thing. I'm like, all right, am I doing too much? Am I going overboard?
Yeah. Well, as you may know, I don't know if you listened to the other episodes, but I've got the LatheWorks knob, which is a great product. LatheWorks in the US, and it's a great product. And I fitted it on the weekend. And, it definitely feels better with the extra weight. When you take your old knob off, you realize how light your original knob is on the 997. It's just plastic. So the LatheWorks feels a lot better. But when you think about the original shape to me is a better shape. It's not like circular, it's a better shape. The bit of leather on the original one has a bit more grip. The LatheWorks is a little bit slippery. But there's a product now that you can actually get, which is called, which is on Renlist. I don't know whether you've noticed it. It's called Heavy Knobs, and you can actually put the weight in your shifter. You just take the top of your shifter off, and it's just little weights that fit into the shifter. So it just gives it that extra bit of weight, which apparently, by all accounts, works pretty well.
Oh, very cool. I got to check that out.
So you can keep the original. Yeah, you can keep the original. So what about so you got the dog? You've got your dog. I see the pictures on Instagram. Do you have the back seats down? How do you do that when you've got a pet in the car? How does your dog get into the car? And what about the back seats? Because I always like having my back seats flat. Is that where your dog lies, on the top of the back seats?
So he's too big. He's about 70 pounds. So I tried that, and originally he didn't like it. So luckily my dad's an engineer. Oh, okay. So he actually destroyed a couch for me because he loves the dog so much, and rigged it so now that it's flat. So the hump isn't there. So now he has this leather couch he lays on, and it's nice and flat. So he gets to sprawl across the whole back of the back of the car.
Oh, fantastic. So when you go for your drives, when you're getting out of New York, where do you take it to? Where are you going on these drives? We'll come up to your favorite drives, but where do you take the car out to? Do you take it on long drives away from New York, or you take it just sort of reasonably local?
Yeah, so we've gone to South Carolina with it. We've gone to the Finger Lakes. We've gone to like Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So we've gone I think the longest drive so far is 7 hours.
Because 20,000 miles in a year is really enjoying your 911. You're not worried about miles at all then. You're not worried about that sort of cost. You just want to enjoy the car.
No, I plan to keep the car forever. So the goal is to just keep getting more Porsches eventually. But yeah, I want to keep this one as long as I can.
You don't worry about, what about the maintenance of the car? We go back to the maintenance of the car, the bodywork of the car, because you're driving it in all types of weather. You're parking it in garages. Do you think that you need to get, detailing done on it regularly? Does it have a PPF layer? Do you have PPF protection on your car? Do you think about those sort of things living in New York and driving the car so often?
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Like right now, it still looks really clean. I get it cleaned all the time. I get it detailed like once a month. And I haven't PPF'd yet, so that's kind of the next step. I want to get the paint correction. I want to get all the scratches done out, and then get the whole car PPF'd at least as much as the car as I can, kind of preserve as much of the paint as I can. Because every time I pick up the car, I see another scratch, another little dent. So I'm like, what am I going to do to kind of prevent this?
So do you get the dents removed like on a regular basis? Like they have those dent removal places that sort of can take them out without sort of destroying the paintwork, or you just sort of leave them till you'll do it eventually when it's sort of, it all comes together?
If they're bad, I'll get it corrected right then and there. And usually the garage will pay for it, which is the nice thing. But if it's not too big of a deal, I'll kind of just leave it. But I have the car set up that there's cameras everywhere. So if something does happen, the cameras come on and they can record what's happening with the car even when I'm not in it.
Oh, okay. That's good. So you said you had a short shifter. Is that the short shifter in your car that came with the car, or you added it to the car? Is that a Porsche short shifter? No, I added it. Is that a Porsche one?
It's a Numeric short shifter.
Oh, you have the Numeric.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So did you go the full Numeric? Did you get the shifter and the cables, or you just went the shifter?
I got the shifter and the cables.
Oh, so how's that? How's it feel? Because Steve's got that in his GT3, and I've driven his GT3 once, and it's very, very short. It's very, 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 very short. Is it very short in the 997 Carrera S as well?
Yeah, it's a significant difference from the previous shifter. It's so much more tight. Because the previous one had not that it had a lot of play in it, but you could just kind of move it around when you were kind of in neutral. In this, it's just locked in. It doesn't move at all.
So if you've got the Numeric shifter, then Matt, you don't really need to weight your knob, because the shifter itself will give you the nice shift. It'll give you the nice shift when you're rolling through the gears. You don't, because I've read on other forums about people adding that heavy knobs thing to their shifter. If they've got the Numeric, it really makes no difference, because the Numeric is so precise and it's so mechanical, and it's such a great, it's a really good shifter apparently by all accounts. You don't really need the extra weight of the knob because you've got that mechanical feel anyway.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just didn't know if just having even the heavier shifter would make it even tighter. But yeah, it makes sense because it's such a tight shift as it is already.
Yeah. So how many miles are on your car again?
So at 82,000 right now.
82,000 miles. Has your clutch ever been changed on your car? Are you concerned? We're going to go to the classic issue that everyone brings up, and we should talk about it. Are you concerned about the IMS? You have an 06, so you'd have the larger bearing, the same as my car, the safer engine numbers, as they call it.
Yes.
Has the clutch ever been changed on your car?
The clutch was changed at 50,000 miles, so the clutch is still brand new. It feels really nice.
50,000 miles, so it's about 80,000 kilometers. So it's about normal wear then. So the people who have owned the car before are quite gentle on the car then. How many previous owners has your car had?
It had 2 previous owners.
2 previous owners. That's pretty good. And the Carrera S, I mean, I've got a base Carrera. I always keep on going on about how the base Carrera is just enough. You don't need the extra speed. You said before that you didn't want a base Carrera, you wanted the S. You think it's worthwhile now that you've got one?
Yes, and I put a tune on it too. I think if I mentioned that. So I bumped up the power, I think 20 or 25 horsepower. So I do I like the little bump in the power.
Okay. You're holding back, Matt. You've done a lot of things to your car. I've done
so much I forget about it.
You've done the Numeric shifter. You've done the Numeric shifter. You've done a tune. What tune did you add to the car? What did you do to the car?
The GIAC.
Okay, and tell the listeners what that actually does and the benefits of that you found.
So it changes the throttle mapping, increases kind of throttle response as well, bumps up the power to I think 15 horsepower or something like that. And then I did that as along with the performance exhaust. So that kind of added, I think, another 5 horsepower. So a total of 20 horsepower extra what I normally had. Wow.
So you really have tweaked the car. You've got the Soul Performance exhaust. You got the chip, the tuning. You got the Numeric. What other performance mods have you added? What about the suspension? Have you left the suspension stock?
So yeah, that's kind of the next step because just because I beat it up so much in the city, I haven't kind of done the suspension yet, but it still feels really good. It doesn't feel wobbly, it doesn't feel that loose or anything like that. So I haven't messed with the suspension yet, but that's kind of the next step.
Because I think when I spoke to Lorenzo, I think he said, and I hope I'm correct here, it was Lorenzo, that his car was quite low when he bought it. It was lowered. And he put it back to stock because he said the terrible size of the potholes in New York and the roads and everything, he fixed it up back to stock. Is your car lowered or is it at standard height?
No, we get eaten by potholes in the city. I've already destroyed 2 tires in the city. So no, I leave it at the stock height.
So it really is that bad in New York, is it? It really is really hard on your wheels.
Oh, absolutely.
So you've damaged the rim? You've damaged the rim or just the tire?
Luckily, not the rim, just the tire, but it literally exploded the tire. Like I hit this pothole and next thing I know, I just hear the car just like making this weird noise. Oh my God, that wasn't good. I pull over, the whole tire just exploded.
Wow.
I've never seen a tire just get that destroyed from hitting a pothole.
Wow, these potholes must be enormous.
Yeah, I looked down for a second to change the radio. Next thing I know, it's just a huge thud.
Wow. Okay, so what are the normal tires you run then? What are the tires you run as summer tires? Are they the standard recommended by Porsche tires, or have you tried something else? Is something like a Cup 2 something you'll put on it because of the fact that you're doing it for performance means? You know, you've got the Numeric, you've got the tune, you've got the Soul Performance exhaust. In summer, when the summer comes around, are you thinking of putting a more higher performance tire on it?
I have the Pilot Sport PS4s right now, and I just got them last year, so I'm just going to put them back on again once I get out of my winter tires.
And they're a great tire, by all accounts.
Oh, they're awesome.
Yeah, because I've got the Pilot Sport 2s. I just follow I follow the old-fashioned way and just do the PS2s as Porsche recommends. But I think I'm tempted to go with those ones because everyone says that they're very, very good. And I know Steve's got his second set. He's got them on his GT3, and he said they're very, very good on his GT3 as well because he used to have Cup 2s on his GT3. So, I mean, it's something to look at, that's for sure. I think they're actually cheaper than the Pilot Sport 2s as well.
I think the PS2s are harder to get. I think that's like the same thing. Yes. I was going back and forth between the 2s and the 4s, and they said, yeah, the 4s are cheaper because the 2s are so hard to get. Yeah,
the 2s are becoming kind of rare, aren't they? I mean, they keep updating them. I think mine are like N2 class. I think they're up to N4, N5. But they are and I noticed in Australia the other day, they're a lot more expensive. Second Porsche. You've got your first Porsche. You got your first 911. You're in the city. Are you tempted to get something like a Cayenne and max it out to an overland look, or are you tempted to get an air-cooled? Is there plans for another 997, or being in New York and living in New York? And I mean, you're a local. You lived in, you're born in New Jersey, you're a New Yorker. Do you feel like you need another car in New York, or you think one's just enough to handle?
Well, as of right now, I mean, I'd love to get another car. It's just not feasible with like how expensive parking garages are, because I'm paying like almost another car payment in a parking garage. So if it was more feasible, I would love to have another one. It would be another 911. Like at this point, it's just me, my wife, and the dog. We're still not having kids yet. Eventually, when we have kids, I would probably bump up to like a Macan or a Cayenne.
So you go the SUV for sure.
Yeah. But even a Panamera, I would love a Panamera. I go back and forth between EV because I know that's the future, but I still love combustion engines.
Yeah. The Panamera is actually a good one, I mean, they're price-wise, they've dipped a bit as well. They're not that expensive. I hear that some of the models have issues, though. You've got to be really careful which model you actually purchase. And I've said it before, when I was living in Bahrain, I mean, there was a lot of Panameras there, because of the size and because of the comfort of them. And I actually did speak to a guy who used to work in Porsche Bahrain, who works at Autohouse Hamilton here in Sydney. And I won't quote the number, but he told me how many they were selling, a month of those cars. And it's just insane the amount of cars they were selling in such a small place. But they were definitely good. I mean, they're a great looking car. I mean, the Taycan is an evolution from that, right? So the Taycan has to be on, even though it is EV, we're all sort of trying to stop and not go EV. But the Taycan it does have a certain appeal, doesn't it? When you see it on the road, it does have a certain stance about it, and it is still a Porsche, even though it is an EV.
No, they look great. I love the rims too. The launch spec rims. They look so classy on the car.
Yeah, the two-tone sort of colored. Yeah, the expensive ones.
But like you said, we see tons of Panameras here. I think the chassis is based off the Bentley, so you could tell why everyone loves them. They're just a great car. The chassis is beautiful. They're soft ride. they're excellent cars.
Yeah, they are, and they're huge and they're big too, right? You can fit enough in them. You put a roof box on the top, and you're set. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm still, Cayennes are attractive, especially when you look at Cayennes. And I don't know whether did you get diesels in the US, the diesel Cayenne?
I think back in the early 2000s, they did, when they first came out, like 2006, but I don't think we had them in a long time.
Oh, right. Because they say that they're pretty good too. The 2016, sort of 2015 diesels are very, very good.
Yeah.
But if you were looking for another 911, which one would you buy? Would you go air-cooled or would you go more modern? Would you put your funds aside, work hard and get a 992, or would you go backwards in time and get a long hood or a G body or something like that?
See, I always go back and forth. My wife loves the Targa, so she loves the 992, 991 Targas. Yeah. So I'd probably try to lean towards that for her, because she loves the manual, but it's hard to drive the manual in the city. So she only drives it when we get out of the city, and she loves to drive it so much. So it'd be nice to get her like a PDK, like 991 or 992 Targa.
Very nice. Very nice. But your wife finds the car quite easy to drive with the Numeric, because the Numeric kind of does it make it harder to drive or easier to drive, you think? Because I found on Steve's car it was a little bit harder it's hard to get used to the Numeric.
No, I agree. So I say it's definitely a harder shift. Like you have to put more effort into the shift, but once you get used to it, it's beautiful. But like I said, when I first got used to it, it was hard kind of going, I'll say from fourth to fifth. It was definitely like a weird toss. Yeah. But then once you kind of get used to it, it was a lot better. But she's gotten used to it too, the more she drives it.
It's a little bit hard to know what gear you're in when it's so short. That's what I find, because you always sort of, not that you look down at your shifter when you're shifting, but you know the position where the knob is, and you kind of have the idea of where it is. And if it's really short, you never really know where you are. That's the problem. You never know really where you are. And I think it just takes time to get used to it. Let's go back to the 997, because you said, you had that 991 from Toro, from the car rental place. Mm-hmm. You had the yellow 991. Then you go into, you wanted to buy a 997 because it gave you that comparison. Why do you think the 997 is becoming so sought after? Why do you think, now owning it for a year, Matt, why do you think it is becoming very, very sought after?
I think the size, it's just the perfect size of the car. Like, not that the 991 is big, but in the city, it's nice to have such a compact car. Also, it's a timeless design. It looks beautiful forever. Just like most 911s, they're always going to look great. I feel like it's reliable. I've never had any issues with it. I know there's the bore scoring issue, the IMS issue, but I feel like if you constantly are driving the car, taking care of the car, getting it serviced, it's not that big of a deal. And also, like, people are just loving the more raw nature of the car opposed to the newer ones, that they're just, getting a little bit more computer generated with everything. I like the fact that I still have analog gauges. I drove a 992, and everything's just so futuristic. It looks super cool. Yeah. But it's hard to kind of see everything when you're driving. You're looking for this button, or you're looking for that, and everything's kind of touch this or touch that. So it's nice when you're driving the 997, you just focus on driving. There's nothing to worry about. Yeah, I agree. I think Porsche's done a great job with the 992. I think it has that 70s, modern sort of 70s look, the way they've done it, even though it's all modern. But it's beautiful. You can't beat the 5 gauges, the 997, the analog gauges and everything. That's just, every time you get into the car, don't you think? Every time you get in there and you see that, it kind of jolts you, and you realize, I'm driving a 911. It's not even the Porsche badge on your steering wheel. It's the gauges. It's the gauges. Totally. It's the gauges and seeing the front of your car. Seeing the front of your car and seeing that view out the back, which just gives you that feeling that you just know, this is pretty cool. This is a lot of history here, and it's a very cool car to drive. Speaking of drives, you drive a lot. Let's get onto the drives, and let's talk about if someone's coming to New York. They can't drive in New York because the potholes are crazy. But if they're coming to New York and you've got plenty of drives that you've done that you've done in your car, you've done 20,000 miles. Where would you say, what's a great drive to do in your 911 or in your sports car, or to get a rental and take it out and just really enjoy it? The big ones everyone's always going to say is Bear Mountain, Seven Lakes Drive. There's another one, Hawks Nest Highway, which is a really cool, twisty road, but it's kind of short. I found the most of my really, really great drives have been more down south, or been more going up north towards kind of Canada area. But I mean, they're all beautiful drives. Every time you take the car out, it's an experience. Every time I start the engine, like you said, I just get so happy and so excited I get to drive the car. But going to South Carolina, we're driving the car for that long, really kind of opened my eyes to what the car is capable of and what you really do experience having a 911 every day. Because in the city, I only get to drive it like twice a week. I don't even get to see the car during the week because it's in my parking garage, so I don't even get to look at it.
Yeah.
So it's so nice to look out the window and, oh, there's the car. Like, it's so nice. Like, it's so nice. So to have it, like, we were gone for like 2 weeks. So we just drove it everywhere for 2 weeks. And it was such a cool experience.
So how many miles was that drive? You went down to South Carolina?
It was South Carolina, yeah. So we ended up going all the way. We stopped at Charleston, then we went to Myrtle Beach, then we went to a couple of areas or just around that area. So it was 800 miles each way.
Wow, that's a great drive. So you really got used to the 911. You really got used to driving it and pushing it to its limits, I bet, as well, Matt.
Totally. And then we took a trip to Watkins Glen and went on the racetrack there. And that's when I really realized that, like, I'm not that great of a driver. I need much, much more time behind the wheel and really hone my skills and push the car to its actual limits.
Oh, so how did that come about? You just near the racetrack and you could just go and do a track day?
Yeah. So we went to Finger Lakes, and Finger Lakes is right where Watkins Glen is. So I was like, oh, we have to go to the racetrack.
Right.
So we go there, we pull up, and I'm like, oh, can I just go on the track? And the guy's like, you can't really just go drive there, but you can go on this thing called Drive the Glen, where you go in with a whole bunch of other cars and you're supposed to go kind of slow, and they bring you around like 3 laps of the track.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, let's do this. So my whole idea was we'll go all the way in the back. We'll let everyone go really far ahead of us, and then I'll just go as fast as I can till I catch up to everyone. And we did that for 3 laps. No one said anything to me. I pushed it like 130 on the straightaway. It was super fun.
How were your schools, though? How are your braking points?
Awful. I go in the straightaway, and I didn't even realize it just goes to a complete, like, straight right. And I'm going really fast. And all of a sudden I see this right, and I slam on the brakes, skid out. And I'm like, all right, I really need to learn this track before I just start going like full out. But it was a great experience.
Sorry, what was the top speed?
Like 126 down the straightaway.
That's pretty fast.
It was cruising.
That's fast. And it sounded good? Everything was good? Everything was intact?
Yeah, I had the exhaust, I had the tune, so it felt really nice.
Fantastic. Oh, that'd be a great thing to test. And you had the Numeric at that point?
Yep, I just got it like the weekend prior to going on the trip. So that's when I really got to kind of learn shift and really understand that having that short shift makes such a big difference.
Yeah, that would have made a huge difference. You would have noticed it straight away.
Oh, huge. Yeah, and definitely.
What about okay, that's a question then. What about the sound of I'm interested with the Soul Performance exhaust because everyone keeps telling me how great they are. How is the sound when you're at those speeds, when you're on the track? Because the exhaust would have sounded completely different, right, to just driving it around the road.
It's loud.
It's too loud, or is it okay?
I love it, so I don't think it's too loud at all. Like, I love loud cars. Not like excessively loud, but if it's a nice noise, like, I want to hear it. So it's when you open it up, it sounds like you're in a race car. To me, it does. I feel like it sounds like an old cup car.
Fantastic. So that sounds like a great trip. So that was one of the best trips you've done in the car?
Yeah, that one, and then the one in South Carolina. We've done so many places. My wife's sister was living in Albany at the time, doing her residency. It's like a 3.5 hour drive. So we go up there, and then there's really fun driving roads up there. I took it rock climbing to upstate New York. So fun roads up there. I just, wherever I can take it, I take it.
So what about those hidden roads, those roads that you don't drive that fast, but they're twisty, they're windy, they just give you that feeling of the weight transfer of the 911. Are there any roads like that you've been on that you think, hey, I want to go on those roads again? Yeah,
so the ones that are close, like Seven Lakes Drive is definitely one of my favorites because if you go there early in the morning, there's no one there. So not like you open it up crazy, but you can kind of feel the rhythm of the car as you're going around the turns, and it's very twisty, and you can go like a good 4 or 5 miles of just not seeing anyone and really kind of pushing the car.
Fantastic. And not many police patrols. You can kind of enjoy it.
I think they kind of know people go there for that, and people are relatively safe for the most part, so they don't really bother you too much.
Fantastic. Hey, I'm just going to let everyone know your Instagram again. So go and follow Matt.
Thank you.
Anomaly Matt. That's how you say it, right? Anomaly Matt.
Yes.
What's Correct. The reasoning behind that Instagram name? Tell the listeners. Is there a story behind that? Because I'm sure there is. So
I used to own a skateboard and surfboard and snowboard company, and it was called Anomaly. And we spelled it like that because, of course, the definition means deviate from normalcy. I was like a younger kid. I was like 20 when I started the company, so I thought it was cool if I spelled it incorrectly.
Oh, so what happened to that company? You just time changed the market and you got out of it, or?
I had it. I started when I was like 19. I had it for about 3 years. I had like a bunch of kids surfing, skating. I'd film videos and make clothes and make skateboards and stuff like that. It went on for about 3 or 4 years, and then I kind of grew out of it.
Fantastic.
It was fun though.
So let me just say that again. Instagram, it's at Anomaly Matt. Go and say hello to Matt. Tell him you heard his story on Owner Stories. Give him a follow. Have a look at his, like I said, his great images. He's got his dog there. He's got his 911. Living the Porsche life. That's for sure, Matt.
Appreciate it, my friend.
I think that's about it. What else? Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we go?
No, it's just a pleasure getting to meet you and talk to you. I've always listened to your stories. It's always really cool just getting to hear other people's experiences, what they do with their car. And just talk to you. You do such a great job at what you do. So it's cool to get to talk to you and experience it.
Thanks, Matt. Much appreciated. And I think it's great. I like owners like you because you really, like you said, you don't drive your car that much during the week. It's in the garage, but when you do drive your car, you really do enjoy it and drive it. You go on long drives, you put 20,000 miles in a year, which is a lot, That's a lot of mileage in a year. A lot of people are sort of hesitant to put too many miles on the 911. And you just enjoy it, and I think that's fantastic. And I think that's what Porsche passion is all about. And I think you really do show it. And also with Lorenzo as well, who you're friends with. Lorenzo is doing the same sort of thing, and it's very, very cool. So thanks so much.
Absolutely, but yeah, as I say, you get the cars to drive them. That's what you want. You don't want to sit there and look them at the garage. The more you drive them, I feel like the more they hold up better. You don't want just to sit them in the garage that everything sits. You never use it. The more you use the car, I feel like the better everything gets with it.
Exactly. And when I was, when I came back to Sydney in November and I took my car over to Autohouse when I drove it over to get the service done, it felt terrible. It really did. It was sad. Like, when you get in the car and it's not chugging, it's not like, but it felt sad. You could hear it. It wasn't happy, and then you get it fixed. And then even now today, I think I've driven over 2,000 kilometers, which is, I don't know what that is in miles. I can't do the calculation in my head since I've been back over 2,000 kilometers. And the car already feels better. You know what I mean? It already feels better. So the more mileage, like you said, the better it is. And they need to be driven. And I think that's what you're doing and you're enjoying it. And it's a great car. Fantastic car. Carrera 2S 997. Thank you so much for being on Owner Stories, Matt. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. That's Matt coming in from New York, from the US. He owns a car in New York, and he really does enjoy it. And it's his 2006 997 Carrera 2S in black, with a lot more mods than I realized. He's got it really specced out, so that's fantastic. Thanks again, Matt.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening to the PorscheCooled Podcast. Bye for now.